Is something that I didn't want to be in that constant cycle with, is like, do I truly want to live here forever? I had to really visualize and envision, is this the place for me? Hello everyone. So we're going to be doing this on the floor. I have been meaning to do a Q&A for a long time. So we're going to try to answer the most asked questions, and some that are very new, and I feel like there's not a lot of people that have answered this question in this space. So one of the most asked questions is, are you moving back to the States? And I did talk about this pretty early on, about how we decided that we didn't want to stay in Japan and we wanted to settle down in the States, and that still stands. That is still very much true. But the thing is, I can't answer too much yet because it was only a decision that we made, and it's not something that has been put into action yet. We don't have a date. My husband just got a new job, so we're planning on staying here for at least a couple more years, and things can change in the future. Our lifestyle ideals and the place that we imagine ourselves in, Japan doesn't have that lifestyle that we are really seeking and looking for. And there are many factors that go into this. We just really love the amount of options that we have when it comes to food, especially for me, having a lot of health conditions and allergies, and who knows, our kids could have allergies too. You never know, but I feel like America has more of a variety of choices when it comes to food. We miss like walking into like a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's and things like that, and we talk about it quite often, me and him, because again, my husband, if you guys don't know and you're new here, my husband lived in California for I think about 8 or 9 years, similar to me living here in Japan for about the same amount of time, and we reminisce a lot. Whenever I go back home, I miss, you know, central heating, I miss dishwashers, I miss having a backyard and a lawn and a possible pool and things like that. And if you think about it, and I think there's a lot of people that are here that don't think about these things, and that is, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years, but like, where do you want to be when you're in your 80s or 90s, or you're on your deathbed? You know, these types of things you have to think about. And I 1000% did not see myself, after really sitting and thinking about it, and a long time ago I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna live here, I'm gonna stay here forever. I didn't see myself, my little old lady self, walking down the street, getting on a train. We also don't love the education system here. I think when you raise kids up until the age of 4, it's great here. It's very safe. There's a lot of pros and cons to that. There's just a lot. There's more that I can say in this. I feel like this is a whole video in itself, but we didn't see us raising kids here. We wanted a bigger home, more space, more land. My husband has more job opportunities and potential to like move up in workplaces and things like that compared to here. But again, like, we aren't leaving anytime soon. We don't have a date. Like, we just don't have a date. It could be 2 years, it could be 4 years. Again, this is all in talks, and I feel like when you're married, you have to think about these things. You have to figure out, okay, well, where do you want to thrive for the rest of your life? Where do you want to raise kids? How do you want your work life to go? And how do you want your family life to go? And where do you see yourself living? I think a lot of people are like, well, what about, you know, your husband? What about your mother and father-in-law? And like all of this stuff. Our parents are the most supportive parents on the planet Earth. My husband is the most supportive husband. My family is the most supportive family. His family is supportive in any decision that we make. I think there's a lot behind the scenes that we discuss that I don't talk about here. This was a collective decision. This was something that we've decided together, and I think that's the most important thing in a relationship and in a marriage. And we dream of doing road trips with our kids someday, and we kind of made a list of the pros and the cons of living in both places. Japan has a lot of pros and cons. America has a lot of pros and cons. It's not as safe in America, in my opinion. That's the only fear that I have is, you know, I left out of college. I have no idea how to adult in the States. So it's gonna be a challenge, lots of reverse culture shock. And that's the other thing, is there's a lot of expats here, and this is something that's not normally talked about. There's a lot of people in denial about their needs and wants of potentially moving back home or moving to another country and not living here for the rest of their life. And they're afraid to kind of like pick up their life again and move back and restart. And that is something that I didn't want to be in that constant cycle with, is like, do I truly want to live here forever? I had to really visualize and envision, is this the place for me? And I think a lot of expats have a hard time facing that, is I really truly want to move back home and I want to do something else, but I'm afraid because everyone back home moved on, I have to start over again, I have to find a new job, and that scares expats sometimes, so they end up staying here and feeling bitter about their experience as they continue to move forward in this country. I'm not saying this is everybody. There's a lot of people that opt to stay here and they love it and this is where they want to thrive. But you really have to ask yourself these questions and sit with yourself and really be honest with yourself. I don't want to always have that fear of America. You stay here and you watch the news all the time. When I see what's going on in America, I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. This is so bad. But there's also a lot of things here that are happening here that are negative and not always the best. A lot of the times Japan hides a lot of the bad news and things like that, but America is the media is very different in America compared to Japan. So I see what's going on in the States and I'm like, is this really where I want to go? There's a lot of fears in that, but at the end of the day, you have to figure out, okay, what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? Where do you feel your kids will have the most opportunity in the end? Even if we didn't have kids, I feel like we would still move back to the States and settle down. And that's just collectively our decision and what we felt was going to make us the happiest in the end. And, you know, I have to kind of retrain myself when I do move back. I was the one that was kind of hesitating on potentially moving back to the States out of fear, but my husband was the one who was like the one that really wants to go back. You know, I love that. I love that he loves my country and like he wants to move back. This question is going on way longer than it's supposed to, so I'm gonna continue. Basically, I can't say anything else, but it's kind of like up in the air. We're not leaving anytime soon, but it's something that we're really thinking about, especially like right now I'm trying to have kids. I would love to just have my kids here or my child here and then move back. Anything can happen. Anything can change, you guys. There's really no, I hate Japan or I hate America. My battery died. Anyway, I feel like this could be a video in itself and I will talk more about it as things unfold. Hey Kelly, how long have you been learning Japanese? Do you feel like it's mandatory to learn the language when moving to another country? Have you felt judged for not speaking it? Here's the thing, and this is something that's not talked about a lot, and a lot of people fear moving to another country because they're not fluent in a language, they're not that great in a language. There's a lot of people that fear starting a YouTube channel or being on social media because they are afraid they're not good enough. They're not doing this, this, and this. And most of the time, people that do judge you, and someone asks me, do you feel judged? A lot of the people that do judge you are people that aren't learning the language themselves or have never experienced living in another country and things like that. So you cannot take that to heart. Here's what I think. This is just my opinion. Depending on your situation as to why you moved here affects how motivated you are to study the language. When I moved to Japan, I moved with the goal to get a job in education and teaching. I graduated with an education degree, an ESL minor. I wanted to come here for just a year to actually teach English. Like I really enjoyed I was an assistant teacher in the US and I loved teaching kids from other countries and teaching English to kids in other countries. So my purpose was to move here specifically for that. I wanted to create a portfolio of different lesson plans. I also had a degree in Japanese because I do believe that it's important that you know at least some of the language. For example, asking where the bathroom is or ordering something or having like a basic conversation with your coworkers and things like that. That's important. I was at the higher intermediate stage when I moved to Japan, and I've kind of stayed in that level for a while, but I had other priorities. I had other things that I really wanted to grow and to improve in, which is my teaching skills. I started editing and filming, and I started to find my passion more in content creating and social media. So I was focused on studying that. I almost got a master's degree in education when I realized that wasn't my thing. I was just really trying to figure out myself here and find more peace within myself, more independence, more growth. I studied Japanese and I still study Japanese today, but I'm not fluent. I really am not fluent, but I can go out and I can have conversations with people. I can negotiate things with brands who are in Japan and speak Japanese, especially when I do sponsors. Some of these companies don't speak English all the time, so you have to know how to figure out, okay, what does this company want? What does their brand want? You should never feel ashamed or judged moving to Japan as a beginner and or living here for a long time and not being completely fluent or advanced in a language. But you should know the language of the country that you're living in to a degree where if someone came up to you and said something to you, you understood it. You can figure out what they're trying to tell you and what they're asking of you. You need to know how to do certain things, make appointments, but people are judged so much. If you don't plan on living here for a long time, if your goal is to not live here forever, you do not need to know Japanese or any language in any other country fluently if you plan on, moving back home and you have other priorities, you have other goals in your life. Some people have other things that they want to accomplish more than being fluent in a language, and that's okay. But I knew someone that was living here for 10 or 11 years and didn't even know how to ask where the bathroom is. She would always speak English when she was ordering, and the person would not understand what she was saying, and so I would have to step in and translate. It's just like, girl, you've lived here for 10, 11 years, you should at least know some basic Japanese. I feel like my listening has gotten way better than my speaking, especially as an English teacher. You don't get the opportunity to practice Japanese very often. A lot of schools don't allow you to speak Japanese even after classes because kids could be listening. That's at least what my company did, and I worked there for 6-7 years. And so that was a challenge. I could speak Japanese to my coworkers during break time, but when you're surrounded by English all the time and you come here as an English teacher, it definitely can be complicated unless you actively take the time and hours to study. There are people that go to work and don't have the time. They come home exhausted and they don't have time to study, and instead they use their weekends. If you're not focused on actually learning a language and actively speaking it and seeking out opportunities, then yeah, it's going to be tough. But you should never feel ashamed of that, especially if you have other visions and goals in your future and in your life. So I feel like that people can be very harsh on other people, but you should learn beginner intermediate level of Japanese to be living here. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's goals are different. Everybody's life is different. Everybody learns very differently. As a teacher, I know that wholeheartedly, is that everybody has a different way and speed of learning. Psychologically, there's so many different ways that people consume and understand information, and so we cannot be shaming anybody on their language ability at all, and you should never feel ashamed moving to Japan beginner level or not knowing anything at all. But take those chances to learn and understand the language as much as possible so that you can have a basic conversation with someone and that you can do like everyday things, if that makes sense. Is there anything you're nervous about regarding pregnancy in Japan or childbirth in Japan? Being a foreigner starting a family, what healthcare is available to you while pregnant? So one thing is they give you coupons when you're pregnant. It's much cheaper to give birth in Japan versus in the States. There are also support groups here, which are amazing. I'm actually part of one. There's a Tokyo pregnancy group, and so helpful. So many amazing doctors that I found through that community. So many things for mothers and for even fathers and or soon-to-be fathers and things like that. I plan on hiring a doula if I do get pregnant. The only thing that I fear is just going through the appointments and epidurals here. A lot of women don't use epidurals to give birth, so it's a lot more expensive to even ask for that. But that's something that I definitely want if I were to get pregnant and give birth. Finding the right hospital, just doing this without my family here is very nerve-wracking, but at the same time, like I said, I want to hire a doula, and there are some great ones here. There's also like a mom's workout group and all sorts of things that there's like a bell outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Sorry if you can't hear me, but there's so much support, so many great services here. It's a lot cheaper, but yeah, so there's not too many fears. It's just, this is my first time actually trying to conceive, so it's definitely going to be scary the first time. But again, there's so much support here. And I appreciate that so much. I'm really grateful for that. So someone asked, did your health problems start after the antibiotics that you took specifically, or did you also have health issues as a child? I have a lot of the same issues you do: allergies, IBS, asthma. Just curious about your health history. How have you been treating your symptoms, and how you cope? So my gut issues have always been a thing since I was like in college, but they started to get worse and worse down the line. I think some of it had to do with stress, but most definitely, yes, antibiotics. I worked for a company that basically told me that if you don't get better in like the next 2 or 3 days, then you will potentially be fired, or we won't re-sign your contract. I work with kids, mind them. I work with kids, and so you get sick a lot when you work with kids, and it kind of blew my mind that this was said to me, and not just to me, but other people. I loved the kids. I loved the idea of the company. Management needed to change, but that played a huge role in my stress levels. I was basically forcing myself to take antibiotics. They didn't tell me to take antibiotics, but I was like, how am I gonna get better? Because it took me a while to get better after I got sick from a kid. It would take like a week or two, and it's really hard when you have an active job, you're lifting things, you're running around with children. I struggled a lot, and I love teaching kids. I think teaching kids is the best thing ever. I have a love for teaching children versus adults here in Japan. It's just the most rewarding, most exciting thing ever, and I have a love for that. But I was told over and over again to get better fast. Oh my God, it's so loud outside. I was told constantly, get better fast, otherwise, things aren't gonna go well for you. You're gonna have to find a new job. I even had a company that told me they were going to take away my visa and like all of this stuff, which they cannot do, just so you know. They have no power to do that. And that's something that I didn't know in the very beginning when I worked here. But yeah, I took a lot of antibiotics, and then at one point my gut was just a mess. And so it took like 2 to 3 years to really get to this point. I ended up accumulating a lot of food allergies and things like that. Now I'm at that point where I've been able to heal 2 of my food allergies. I don't have as many symptoms, problems. I have some IBS and like bloating and things like that. I still have asthma. I've had that since I was a kid. I've had a peanut allergy since I was a kid. I had colic when I was a baby. So there was a lot of gut health issues very, very early on in my life. So this is something that's not super new to me. Taking a good probiotic, diet changes, things like that have helped me really improve. I've taken herbal medications and seen gut health doctors, done lots of testing and things like that. So it was a process and a journey, but I'm much, 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 much better than I was like 2 or 3 years ago. I think also, and I'm not saying to quit your job, but quitting my job did help me a bit because I wasn't in such a toxic environment. There are so many great jobs out there, so it's just about finding the right one. It's just, there are a couple companies that just were not ideal and did not treat their workers right. So I was just not in a great place, and it stressed me out a lot. What would you say are 3 things anyone who wishes to start a business like yours should know? So when people think business, they think corporate and like hiring people, and it's a lot of work, and working for yourself is difficult, when in reality things have changed so much over the years. If you're on YouTube, you're a business. If you're an influencer, you're a business. If you're an online coach, you're a business. Like there's so many different businesses out there. If you're on Etsy and you're selling something on Etsy, you're a business. The number one advice that I have to give right now is for anybody who's wanting to start a business, find something you love and that you're passionate about. If you are not passionate about it, you will burn yourself to the ground. You will be frustrated. Nowadays, businesses are on social media. As a business owner, you are not just running your shop, right? You are also a content creator. You are a social media marketer. You have to know sales. You are a personal brand, managing your money and things like that. Like these things do have to be learned. And a lot of people I noticed were forgetting that, is that they weren't learning how to build their personal brand. They weren't learning how to create content that people are consuming nowadays, or really understanding the evolution of social media. Social media is changing so quickly. So that's my biggest advice, is to find something that you're passionate about and understand that you wear a lot of hats. That's why you do have to find something that you're passionate about and really focus on the love of creating on social media to build up a following. I think a lot of people forget that they need to build a community, and so they just start selling something and they have no like legit audience that trusts them. You don't have that authority at the end of the day, so it can be really hard to really scale a business if you don't have a tight-knit community that you've built or a personal brand. Knowing what you stand for, your messaging, what are you an advocate for in this space? What is your niche? Like, you need to know these things in order to build a successful business, no matter if you're selling a product or a service or you're an influencer and a content creator. Whatever you want to do, you have to know these skills. And I feel like that is what I'm an expert in, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I think that's my biggest advice if you're going into online business, and everybody's finding their thing online, and I love that. And I think that's the most incredible thing, that we have so much at our fingertips today that we can just create whatever reality that we want in this space. And since the panorama started, I call it the panorama because I don't know how YouTube flags things, but during the panorama, like, everybody and their brother was starting an online business, and kudos. You are brave because it's really difficult. You have to really want it too, and figure out, okay, which direction you want to go, and do not be afraid of pivoting and changing and shifting, trying new things, making mistakes. You got to do it all. You got to make the mistakes in order to really rise up and succeed too. So it's all about the mindset. It's about learning the skills and understanding where you stand in this space and what your passions are. How do I know Anming? Like, how is it that we came to live in the same country and we're childhood friends? Honestly, it was a complete coincidence. Like, I had no idea she was interested in Asian countries. I saw that she was living in China like years ago, and I was like, oh, that's cool. We're very close to each other. We've kind of kept in touch on Facebook, and when I came back to the States, we would go out to lunch with a couple other friends that I've known for many, many years, and we kind of had that same friend group since junior high school, because we met in junior high school and we went through high school together. So once we got into college, we kind of like lost connection, like we didn't really stay connected. And then I moved to Japan, and I think she moved to China after I moved to Japan a few years later, and we kind of connected a little bit then. And then she came to Japan, and she moved here for a short time, and I believe she moved back to China at some point, and then she came back here. Another friend of mine came to visit, and so we kind of like connected again there, because I was like, oh, you're in Japan, that's super cool. And so we met up here later on, and that was super exciting and super weird and just surreal to kind of like see your friend who you've known since junior high school living in the same country as you. But I am so proud of what she's accomplished. She knows, now she's learning Korean, but she knows Chinese, now Japanese. Yeah, it was honestly pure coincidence, I guess. And then she lived in Japan, but further away from where I was, so we weren't actively meeting and hanging out as much. And now she moved a lot closer to me, so it's a lot easier to hang out, which is great, because I feel like whenever I hang out with her, it's like a piece of home, like a piece of family. And I think that is so important when you move here, is to find your family, right? And your family isn't necessarily blood related. It's, you know, the friends that you make here and things like that are very important. And I think that's why a lot of foreigners seek out foreign friendships, is because, you know, they do miss that piece of home, and having people that they can really connect with and communicate and relate to is important as well. So when I hear people say things like, you should only have Japanese friends, and that's the only way to like live in this country, I think it's good to have a balance of both if possible. This is a whole nother video as well, is like making Japanese friends, and it's definitely tougher to make Japanese friends in Tokyo. People are very busy. It's hard to match up time to meet and things like that. A lot of foreigners complain about that on forums and things like that. So I feel like that's an important thing too, is when you do move here, finding a community that you can relate to, that you can communicate really well with, that does feel like home, like family. When you lived here for a long period of time, you start to miss, you know, things from your own country. So there's like cafes, like American cafes that I go to feel that nostalgia. But whenever I'm hanging out with her, or, you know, other friends, foreign friends, it's like, you know, spending time with your family. When you are away from your actual family, you can have some homesickness and you miss those things. So creating a community of people that relate to you back home, like your actual home, it can be truly, truly important. And I'm very lucky to have somebody who I know here and I've known for a long time, because we do love to reminisce, and when she comes over, we'll play video games and, you know, have some pizza or something like we used to, and just do some like nostalgic things. And I think that really fills that space in my heart when I am missing home and things like that. I think this video has been long enough. Hopefully this answered some of your burning questions. There were a lot more, but like I said, if you have any questions, ask them down below and I'll put them in the books, so next time I can answer them as well. It doesn't have to be about Japan. It can be about lifestyle or personal questions or marriage or children or future or habits, things that I love to do, my favorites, whatever that may be. It can be pretty much anything. Life advice. I've been through a lot in my 20s, so I feel like I can give you some kind of advice. Anything that's not easily Googleable, if that's a word. If you can Google it pretty easy, I'm not gonna answer. But other than that, I hope this was a successful Q&A, and I will talk to you again soon. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you have any more questions for me, leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I upload. And if you'd like to support this channel so I can make the best content possible, hit that super like button. If you're a content creator or entrepreneur, you can also follow me on my second Instagram account, Kelly Marita Social, and I'll see you guys in the next video.